What's happening, everybody? So I wanted to give you guys some initial driving impressions. The weather is fantastic tonight here in Houston. So I wanted to get an immediate driving impression as well as get you guys some data just basically as soon as I got it. So here's that Mopar cold air intake. And cold air intake is a bit of a misnomer for this thing. In the last video, I had expressed a concern that wash from the cooling fans drawing that hot air through the radiator was going to be an issue with this cutout here in the top of the intake and in that hole down there where I'm currently let me get this thing out of the way so I can see what I'm up to, where I'm currently using a just a silicone pipe or a silicone piece of ducting here that I had left over to basically just redirect air onto that filter. Well, the issue that I've found, and my suspicion was correct, at idle, this thing gets real hot real quick. Ambient temperature today is around 58 to 60 degrees, give or take. And that thing, just sitting at idle, you can watch the air temps just creep up and up and up and up. Now, I want to point out that the main purpose of the testing for this intake was to find the intake temperature inside of the box. Now, presumably, you would have thought that it would have been a sealed enclosure, but again, you've got this big gap sitting over here as well as that hole. And what's happening is it's allowing a ton of hot air washing off of those fans as it circulates in throughout the engine compartment, is getting drawn right in and right onto that filter. The issue that I'm running into also is that it doesn't dump temperature as quickly as the leg maker does. That thing dumps temperature fast, or even as fast as the Hellcat system. And again, I want to point out that I do have this sensor blocked off. There's an access port here, an access hole for the crankcase ventilation to run into the filter. Again, unfiltered and into the intake. Not a good idea. Anyway, it is blocked off though. And the reason why I blocked it off is I didn't want this to be getting hit with any hot air or anything like that, just as it sits in the car. So again, the problem that I found is at idle, this thing gets hot quick. In fact, I saw just letting the car idle for about, 5 minutes or so. The thing got up to about 125, 135. So I just let the thing idle for another, couple of minutes, and it got as high as 152 degrees, and that's in a 52 degree ambient temperature day. Now, here's where I see this intake actually working, and it's kind of a funny thing to say it like this, but at the track, this intake may work fairly well, only because you can, as you're sitting in the staging lanes, have your hood open, and when this thing is sitting at idle with the hood open, it starts to dump temperature quick because it's not sealed, it's pulling straight ambient air. In that respect, it cools off really fast. So if you're sitting there, if you're trying to hot lap the car, you can actually sit, pop open the hood, and even with the fans on, it will start to dump temperature fairly quickly. The problem starts when you shut the hood. And I don't know, I was actually a bit surprised with how fast it did start to collect temperature. So when I pulled it back into the garage, I was kind of feeling around, and of course this thing's right on the coolant reservoir. But the issue that I found is even the filter element itself was hot. I mean, it's not like it was a fluke. The element was hot. Of course, this thing gets scalding hot. That's the whole point of moving the air temperature sensor into here. But again, it was just absolutely ridiculous how hot this thing got. So if you're thinking about getting one of these open element filters, this is one thing to definitely consider. Your static temperatures, in other words, your at idle temperatures, are going to get hot. A lot more warm than I actually had anticipated them to be, as a matter of fact. So a bit surprised with that, but again, I do feel that, from if you're looking for a number at the track, I'm going to try to get down there here in the next few days. But again, you can get the temperature down just by popping your hood. I mean, it's not something you can do with the Hellcat system because it's a sealed enclosure. But where the Hellcat system does have an advantage is it just doesn't get as hot as fast as this one does, so it doesn't have to bleed off as much temperature. Plus, even when this thing is underway and you're feeding it with at least some amount of fresh air through the headlight, the problem that you're going to run into is that it's still, even under speed, going to be drawing in this dead hot air through the gap right here. And that's a bit of a problem because, again, it's not really acting as a sealed enclosure. If anything, it's only allowing you to draw in that hot air with no draw-through effect through the bottom of this housing through the fender well. So you lose the draw-through effect through the fender well. You get a little bit of supplemental cooling through the headlight in that hole there onto the filter. But the problem again comes because it is still open to the rest of the engine bay. The heat does absolutely still find its way into this housing, into the filter. And again, even with the air temperature sensor completely out of the way of any heat from the fans or anything else, does get significantly more warm. And again, the temperature inside of that box or inside of this enclosure was hovering around, 140 to 150 plus degrees on a 58-degree day. Not good. And again, it's just from the simple fact that heat from these fans is washing into and over that filter, again making it very warm to the touch. So initial driving impressions, I just wanted to get that out there to you and hopefully get some track testing here pretty soon. It's the last day the track will be open this year, so I don't know. I may be taking the Hellcat airbox with me. I might be swapping them out down there, and we'll see what happens. So that's about it for this one. Adios.